the survivor, that it was based so much on the understanding of psychopathology and personality science. They were surprised. They expected maybe the trauma, but they didn't expect, those other aspects. So the updates in personality disorder neuroscience or neurobiology, helps therapists increase their awareness of the latest understandings of PDs, which would be highly beneficial for understanding pathological relationships. So according to the survivor, what we missed was pretty much the whole thing. Most therapists missed the presence of PDs altogether, or didn't suspect the presence of a danger zone personality in the partner or in the survivor's presentation of the relationship and storyline. So according to personality disorder expert Dr. Lester, PDs are often missed because they are commonly assumed to be other disorders. And some of these actually surprised me. Dissociative identity, bipolar, dysthymia, PTSD, ADHD, conduct disorder, reactive attachment. The predominant reason is our generalized grad school class that were neither updated enough, specific enough, or relationally focused enough for this population. And for a lot of us, that class was 20 or 30 years ago. So we're in good company, don't feel bad. Dr. Robert Hare, the world's leading psychopathy expert, reminds us that most of us as clinicians get duped by these types, and that we need more awareness of their frequency in the population and their presentation, but because we are often looking for the wrong thing. So again, this is still the trickle down effect from the number one problem. For therapists that did suspect a PD, they did not understand the impact, elevated risk, or dangerousness of the psychopathology on the relationship, the survivor, or the children. Still trickling down. Consequently, because of all of that, we did not teach our clients. Survivors knew nothing about elevated risks to make decisions from. They did not have the pathology education from which to understand elevated risks and pathology, so they could make a pathology-centric decision about the risk. Most had no idea what narcissism or psychopathy could do, or were likely to do, because they didn't know their partners might have it and knew nothing about it. They were only told from the therapist, if the therapist suspected anything, that he won't change. So for those therapists who did suspect personality disorder, a high percentage of them believed that PDs were very curable, even psychopathy. We've had, that shared, with clients in the past from therapists that they went to. Even sadism and mocks, which interestingly were not recognized for the disorders that they were, but the behaviors were suggested as treatable by therapists. So Personality disorder expert, Dr. Lester, said that current research shows only 5% shows significant treatment improvement in a 2 to 7 year window. Therapists felt if there was a PD partner, it was not only likely highly treatable, but also recommended joint sessions, elevating a survivor's risk. We're still trickling down. There seems to be, in some cases, a theory bias. And so we say, you won't look for something you don't believe in. Many therapists, shockingly, said they didn't believe in personality disorders and believed that all disorders, were capable of complete change. And they were not sure that they believed in the concept or the field of psychopathology. Yet they were treating someone affected by someone else's pathology. They identified more with, positive psychology. And it actually was their own theory bias that had a significant negative impact to the survivor because of how they approached the topic and the understanding of PDs, according to the survey. So again, I want to reiterate, if that's not your bag, this is highly predicated on personality, science, and psychopathology and trauma. So we're still trickling down, still having problems related to that number one issue, which had to do with personality disorder theory and the etiology of it. Many therapists only knew one theory about the etiology of personality disorders, if they believed in personality disorders. And that theory was the nurture theory, or the verse of childhood theory. That particular nurture theory, which is only a kind of a partial theory, guided what they taught the survivor about her partner, beliefs about the partner's treatability, intervention, prevention, and safety precautions. So survivors named it as the least helpful and often dangerous explanation that led them into more cycles of relational harm. The survivors named 2 other highly helpful etiologies that actually moved them towards disengagement. And we go into a lot of detail on those etiologies in the next workshop. More theory problems. We're still having a trickle-down effect. Most of the theory that we use to understand and treat non-pathological clients is for learned behavior. And most of what is used to help these survivors understand pathology, so as to be able to analyze the risk, is not theory related, particularly to learned behavior. We end up applying a right theory to the wrong problem or disorder. So kind of as a recap, these treatment failures that we now understand are connected to a lack of differentiation and a lack of training in that differentiation, emanating out of our lack of pathology and personality science, according to them. But the good news is all of that it is easily rectifiable. And there's been a lot of study, over the last few decades, with a lot of, reputable evidence about the particulars of this field. So training for therapists as a solution has has closed the gap on what the Finding Competent Care study and survivors pointed to that was behind the wrong approach. So narcissistic and psychopathic abuse, knowledgeable, that's the key word, knowledgeable treatment for survivors is desperately needed for the estimated 100 million survivors of PLRs who either need treatment or have failed treatment. Again, if we go back to the math, that 1 in 5 has a personality disorder and 1 in 100 has no conscience. And then you take the prevalence rate, you know, and then multiply, divide by the population. It's 100 to 150 million people that could have been harmed. It's a, you know, any of us that work in the field are never, you know, without clients, and especially as the awareness of this is coming to light, and that work is being put into the differentiation. There's plenty of people out there that have been harmed that are looking for knowledgeable therapists on this. So our data shows that the knowledge and skills most needed for successful treatment of this population is updated psychopathology theory, and importantly, how to use it. Personality science related to both the PD partner and the survivor. Some of that is taken from our Purdue research, and how to use it. Trauma treatment skills, 75% of these survivors have a trauma disorder. And an evidence-based, trauma-informed, standardized model of care approach. So over the 14 years of teaching therapists how to use this model of care, over 90% of them did not have those knowledge bases. Their specialization was not psychopathology. And like I said, I think they were surprised when they came for the training that so, you know, much of the work hinges at least on a pretty detailed understanding of that. And so it's not, I mean, if you're listening and you think, you know, I don't have that skill set, we've taken 90% of the therapists that have come for training that didn't have that specialization either. So our training program through PESI prepares therapists whose specialization was not psychopathology or personality. And by updating these knowledge bases and training therapists in an evidence-based and trauma-informed model of care treatment approach for these survivors. So it takes out the guesswork and the winging it. And I know a lot of therapists have talked about that it feels like